Good day, Ms. Papendorp.
Good afternoon, Chief Justice.
Are you
Members of the
well?
Commission. I'm fine, thank you.
You have acted as a judge before, have you not?
That is correct, sir.
Please tell us how your experience as a lawyer prepared you for that acting sting or those acting stings.
As a lawyer and as a magistrate, or just as a lawyer, sir?
Any experience
Sure.
that would capacitate a person for a higher judicial office?
Sure, sir. I was in the private practice for about 10 years, where I deal extensively with civil as well as criminal-related cases, family law cases. After that, I joined the District Court bench in 2002, and there I have also dealt extensively with criminal as well as civil cases. At various times, I've dealt with civil specifically as a civil magistrate, where the area where I was posted didn't have a specific civil magistrate post, but I was responsible for all the civil work in the area. Then in 2010, you will recall that the regional court got civil jurisdiction. I received an enlistment to sit on the civil regional court bench, and I extensively assisted the regional court president to establish the civil regional court bench in various areas in the Eastern Cape. Now, all this experience, with criminal as well as civil, although it's not specifically the same civil act which is applicable, the basics are the same, has assisted me tremendously to, as far as I'm concerned, relatively smoothly transition from being a regional court magistrate to actually acting in the High Court then. It assisted me greatly as I had that experience also on the bench the past 15 years, where I did preside as presiding officer, served to make it an environment that was not totally strange or unfamiliar to myself.
If you add up your acting stints, how many months does that do they amount to?
So I think one of the societies which actually wrote a report on me counted it for me. It's about 8 months.
8 months?
Yes.
Did you find it easy to adjust from serving as a regional court magistrate to acting as a high court judge?
So yes, relatively easy in the sense that the criminal work which I did in the High Court is very much similar to that in the regional court. It's what we do on a daily basis. So that transition, I would say, was very smoothly. As far as the civil work is concerned, I didn't experience that much problems. The main problem probably was, for the first time, you have to actually write a judgment bearing in mind that it's always reportable, that people are going to read it, so you have to really do your research properly, which I thoroughly enjoyed. It wasn't difficult, it was just challenging, as many of these judgments I subsequently had to write when I've finished my acting stint, and I was then faced with a lack of resources where I'm stationed, to actually finalise it, but I did finalise all of them.
What is the longest period you've ever kept a judgment reserved for?
So if I remember correctly, it was just over 3 months. Part of it was I was waiting for submissions from the DPP in Umtata, when my last acting stint when I was there, as well as from the defence attorney. They furnished it quite late, but I did manage to, after I received those representations, me as well as Judge Dawu, with whom I was sitting on the appeals, brought out the judgment, if I remember correctly, within 2 weeks.
So on the whole, you've never really had a problem with producing judgments within a relatively short period of time?
So no, I would not say I had a specific problem, no.
Yes.
Other than the one which I've mentioned.
Yes. Thank you. Acting Judge President.
Thank you, CJ. Good afternoon, Madam Papendorp.
Good afternoon, JP.
Because my colleagues in the division approached me and informed me that they are not happy about the period of time which some or all the candidates for appointment have taken I have to ask you this question.
Sure.
8 months is not a long period of time, isn't it? Out of the 8 months, and given that you come from the magistrates, and given that the High Court deals most of the time with complicated civil matters, how many weeks of the 8 did you spend in the motion court? If you can remember.
So I'm talking under correction. If I have to talk out of the first now, it will probably have been about 4 to 6 weeks.
Motion court?
Just motion court. That was when I was doing duty as well, yes.
Civil trials?
I beg your pardon?
Civil trial?
So all together during this whole acting stint, I have dealt with 4 full-blown civil trials.
Thank you. I have no further question, CJ.
Thank you, Acting Judge. President Premier?
Thank you, CJ. Just a short one from me. It's the effect of the delays in handing down judgments. Do you have any take on that regarding the time in which you had the acting stints?
For myself. So as far as my criminal judgments is concerned, they were delivered right away. If I finished reading or hearing evidence and address on a Thursday, I would give judgment on the Friday. So civil judgments, there were no delays whatsoever. Even with my appeals, which I've dealt with, besides the one which I've dealt with in umtata for the reasons which I've stated, the civil delays were mostly due to the fact that I was, in the meantime, after I've been in the civil and I'm talking about the civil trials. After I've been in the civil trial, then been taken out from the civil section, as I then had to go and do in a criminal matter urgently, as there was problems and there was nobody else to do the criminal matter. So that then took me out effectively from researching in that period of time, which is then also usually just before I end my period, my acting stint, with the result that I have to go and do the research when I get back to my station at the regional court, which I said produced problems with research and with resources.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Premier. Commissioner Nokesi?
Thank you, Chief Justice. Just a few questions for me, Ms. Papendorp. This judgment that you have attached, Basil Johnson.
Sorry, which one?
The judgment of Basil John, yes, among the judgments that you have attached. I know that this matter was heard on 16 March 2015. When was the judgment delivered?
Arsenio.
Yes, that judgment.
Arsenio versus Pereira. So I can't give you straight out of it. I just tried to look it up right now, but I couldn't find it. I know it was delivered during the recess in that year, just following that term which I've heard that matter.
So was it necessary for you to reflect the date of delivery of the judgment?
So yes, in hindsight, it was necessary. Unfortunately, at that period of time when I furnished this judgment, it was part of my own typing. I typed my own judgments. I did not have time to actually obtain the judgments which went in through the register of the civil section. That is why it doesn't appear there. I do apologize for that.
The next case is that of Wendell Peterson. I know it was heard on 17 November 2016. When was the judgment delivered in that one?
Are you talking about the criminal? Sorry, sir.
Yes, it's your judgment, the second judgment that you attached in your application.
Sorry, I don't have the following the order here. I will not be able to give you. If it's a criminal matter, it would have been immediately. If it's a civil judgment, I can't tell you off my head.
No, it was a bail pending appeal. It's
Peterson.
Yes, Peterson.
So if I remember correctly, it was done later the same day.
Yes, because it only reflects that it was heard on 17 November. There is no date when it was delivered, just like the other judgment.
Yes, no, like I said, that is what happened to all my judgment. Unfortunately, I didn't detail it on my own copies, which I kept when the dates were, when I've actually heard and when I've delivered. But the Peterson one, I can specifically remember, I dealt with it later that same day. I've heard the matter in the morning, and I went back and I delivered the written judgment. I think it's 3 or 5 pages. So.
This is my last question. Do you think that if you are given more time to act you will learn those basics in the judgment writing, that it's critical, the date when you hear the matter, when it was delivered, so that you answer this question whether the judgment has been promptly delivered, so that all of us can know exactly. Don't you think that those are the things that you need? Hence, you should be given more time to act than being appointed now.
So with all due respect, those are, like you really say, nitty-gritty issues. It's important, but it's things which I've realized in the meantime. It's been brought under my attention. I should insert it. Unfortunately, like I said, by the time I've sent this application, it wasn't inserted. So I don't think you need more months to learn it. I just need to start doing that.
Thank you, Commissioner. JSC, Deputy Minister.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Can I just check, you finished acting, your last acting stint was at the end of June, is that right?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. In your application, you said you had one reserve judgment, which is an appeal of Mandla Nkosi Dlungela.
Yes, that's correct.
Have you submitted that?
I've had submitted that already, sir, in the recess, that period, just after I've actually sent down the application.
Then, when you submitted this form, which was on the 23rd of June, you had 3 part-heards. You'd completed your acting stint in the High Court. You had 3 part-heards.
That's correct.
What's the status of them now?
So I finished 2 of them. There's just one outstanding. If I remember correctly, it's the Ngezi one. What happened there, we would have finished last week Friday after the defence has closed their case, but then the accusers actually fired his advocate, and he has reapplied since for legal aid. We have now set it down with the senior judge's knowledge for the 4th of December, sir.
Okay. And you had, is it 8 or 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8
yes.
part-heards in the regional court.
That's correct.
Although I think you acted from the 18th of April. You had about 10 days or just less than 10 days in June when you weren't acting.
Yes.
I don't know if you were sitting in the regional court then.
I did.
What happened to these cases then?
So those which I've listed there, there's just 3 outstanding.
No, but no, I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about
then,
when you took the acting stint, you had 8 part-heards.
Yes.
Did those people then just have to wait for you to complete your acting stint?
That is correct, sir.
And you don't think that's a problem?
So it's always a problem, but unfortunately that is the problem which arises when we from the regional court do get the privilege to go and act in the High Court. We will always have that problem because unfortunately very often we are notified only at a very late stage. As a matter of fact, if I remember, I was notified like 3 or 4 days prior to starting that acting.
But isn't the issue keeping your part-heards under control?
Yes.
I mean, I think with Gauteng there's a restriction of you can't act if you've got more than, I think, 4 part-heards.
Yes.
And the regional court magistrates then keep everything under control.
So, yes, I hear what you say. I do agree it is essential to have as little as possible part-heards. Unfortunately, with the demographics which we have in the Eastern Cape, in the regional court, we act specifically where I'm on a circuit court. So to keep the demographics down to 3-4 part-heards at times most of the times is almost impossible. It would mean that our court hours would be non-existent because we face various problems why a specific part-heard on any specific day can't proceed.
Commissioner Singh.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
I've been partly covered by the Deputy Minister because I wanted to follow up, Chief Justice, on this part-heads. But from a layman point of view, I see, are these reasons given the regional court when it says state case, defense case? I was trying to understand.
Can I respond to that?
On page 15. I was trying to understand, page 15.
It's just the stage of the case, sir. The
where they are at the stage. Okay, fine, then I'm covered. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Singh. Commissioner Norman.
Thank you, Chief Justice. I've also been covered. Thank you.
Thank you. Judge President Lopez.
Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon,
I want to ask you a very quick one with reference to your CV. With regard to language proficiency, you are fully bilingual, English and Afrikaans, and I quote, presently learning to understand and speak isiXhosa.
Yes.
When did you start?
So it is a long process. I'm not very good at languages, you know. I can pick up most of the words. I can't speak the language, but I understand most of what is said at times. I've got a fairly general working knowledge, which helps me at times. I am not proficient in isiXhosa yet, unfortunately.
When did you start? I'm keen to know.
So it's a very long process. I started when I was a kid, you know, then I could have actually understood Xhosa very well. Then we moved from the Eastern Cape to the Western Cape for about 6-7 years. And unfortunately, at very informative years, I've lost it. And we got back. And then I really battled to get into it again. But like I say, you know, common words I can easily pick up, I can understand. But unfortunately, I'm not a linguistic person. I really battled to learn a new language.
Do you believe that indigenous African languages like isiXhosa, isiZulu, Sepedi, and so on must be fully developed so that they can take their rightful place in the courts, so that we can also develop jurisprudence?
Say yes and no. I'm going to tell you yes. I think it's imperative. Everybody's entitled to have their language heard in court, but there's practical reasons why it's not going to work. I think if I recall, lately our Honourable Chief Justice has said that the official language will be English. It's just easier for purposes of judgment writing, for doing appeals, for sending the matters to keep it into one language. But I agree fully with you. They are surely entitled. That is why each one of those indigenous language peoples, when they appear before us in a court of law, they're entitled to have an interpreter which speaks their language and can interpret to them in their own language and for us in the language which is English at this point in time in the courts.
Can I end on a lighter note? Translate this for the benefit of the Commission.
No, that I can't tell you what it means. Sorry.
Commissioner, well, the Deputy Minister knows. Commissioner Ngozi Thomas.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, Madam.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
You told us this afternoon that you acted for eight months as a judge of the High Court.
That's correct.
And of the 8-month period, you spent 4 to 6 weeks of that in the motion court.
Yes.
And when you were asked about civil trials, you said
that's outside that period.
Presided, I beg your pardon?
The civil trials, ma'am, is not during the motion court weeks.
No. But let me perhaps finish the question,
Sure.
then we'll be able to assist each other. So 4 to 6 weeks in the motion court. And then you were asked a question. How much time did you spend in the civil trials court? And I didn't follow the answer.
I don't think I've answered that. I think what I did say, I've done 4 civil trials, ma'am. That was during 4 different weeks which I was assigned to sit on the civil roll. In other words, a trial civil court roll.
Very well.
You've done 4. Didn't you say you've done 4 civil trials?
Yes, I've done 4 civil trials, sir. That was during the 4 different weeks which I've attended to civil trials. But that was the only trials which I've heard that was proceeding.
Would that have been during the same 8-month period that
Yes.
you've acted? Yes. So you see, I get the impression that you could use more acting time, particularly in the civil courts, considering that you have vast experience, but I read that experience to be more on the criminal litigation side of things. Would I be correct? Am I correct in my impression or
Ma'am,
not?
as far as my acting stint in the High Court is concerned, I've been exposed to very little civil work itself. As far as my civil experience is concerned, it's not limited to that period. You must remember that I'm sitting in the Civil Regional Court 2 to 4 days a month, where I do motion court, I do tend to pre-trials, I do civil trials. You know, I didn't give any reflection on that in the application itself. I deal with civil applications very often, more than 2 to 4 days. I get frequently called by lawyers which I have to go in for ex parte applications and the like. So, and I'm talking about civil in the regional court. But like I said, at this point in time, in the past couple of years, there's been a movement to align the civil, or specifically the Magistrate Act and the rules, with the High Court rules and Act itself.
No, thank you. Excuse me interrupting you, but
Yes.
Would you agree with me that civil practice in the magistrate court is different to an extent to civil practice in the litigation, rather, in the High Court?
No, that is for sure so, ma'am.
Yes. So when one suggests to you that you could use more acting time, getting exposure to civil litigation in the High Court, how would that be unfair?
It won't be unfair, ma'am. Any acting experience, every exposure is always a learning curve and it's always helpful. So I will not be against it. Please don't understand me wrong. I just say that I've got the apt and the understanding of the civil law and of the principles of it to apply my mind to whatever civil case is brought before me. Like, for instance, when I was now acting the last stint in Port Elizabeth, for the first time I was called to deal with shipping law, which I've never before in my life dealt with. But I've had two applications and I dealt with it successfully and I managed. It was actually quite interesting and challenging.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief Justice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ngozi Thomas. Commissioner Mpofu.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chief Justice. Mine is a very quick one. It's just a follow-up on Judge President Lopez's question on language. Look, accepting that, as you call it, the practicalities and all that make it necessary for now that we use English as a language of record. Because, as you say, it will be costly and so on and so on. But should we accept that situation forever? Amen. In other words, should any measures be taken now so that at some stage, whether it's 50 years, 100 years, whatever, at some stage these languages should be developed to such an extent that you have developed a jurisprudence and books and so on and so on. In other words, we have to start somewhere. Even if I just write one book in Xhosa on the law of succession, that's at least one step. The next year, someone else might write another one and so on, until one day we have, you understand what I'm saying? Should we just give up and say, well, it's English, it's impractical, it's expensive? Well, it will be like that in 1,000 years' time.
So, well, if I understand you correctly, I think we're talking about two things. The one is a court language, a general court language to speak of. If I follow you, what you're saying to me now, you're referring to reference work for training of lawyers, of presiding officers. Definitely, on that score, I think it's imperative, it's essential that people be able to learn in a language which they're comfortable with. So yes, I think that would be the right route to go to. As far as court is concerned, it's going to be extremely difficult. You can imagine just having a presiding officer for all these different languages. You're going to appoint a specific presiding officer judge for a specific court which only deals with specific languages, because how else are you going to facilitate it? It's going to become a nightmare. But I agree with you fully that there should be ways should be found to promote these other languages as well in that sphere.
So in short, we must just accept our fate because it will be a nightmare.
So you never have to accept your fate, but you always have to look for new and creative ways to try and deal with it. If one finds of it, it's going to be a big bonus for this country.
Thank you, Chief Justice.
Thank you, Commissioner Mpofu. Commissioner Masuku.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon, sir.
I'm just following up the questions that you were asked by the Deputy Minister relating to your decision to take up an acting appointment in circumstances where you had 11 part heads. I just want you to appreciate the enormity of the prejudice that such a decision has on people who are awaiting, who are involved in these part heads. Did you appreciate the injustice that a decision like that causes to people who are waiting to hear what your decisions are on the cases?
I'm actually fully aware of that, sir. Fortunately, I did have my regional court president's full cooperation as far as that's concerned and his support.
No, let me put it this way. If I were one of these persons, the people that you were prosecuting, the people that you were going to decide their fate on, I wouldn't be impressed with that answer. If they are listening right now and hearing that you decided to go and take an acting appointment in circumstances where you had 11 part heads, the effect of which their justice was delayed, by a significant amount of time, it tells me that your sense of judgment is not sensitive to the interests of justice. It also tells me that you didn't really consider that by taking an acting appointment, you're imposing an almost impossible task on yourself. Because once you take an acting appointment, you get more work. That requires a rigorous attention to detail. Now, it doesn't, in my view, and you can comment on what my view is, it doesn't reflect very well of someone who aspires to be a judge, that at the entry level of justice, this is how you treat ordinary people who are accused, who are coming before you for justice. I just want your comment on it.
So I think I already commented as far as the position in the regional court is concerned. Unfortunately, that is what we're dealing with. You know, we are often called from the regional court to assist in the high court, but this is exactly the problem which we deal with. And it doesn't reflect on my views on delaying judges specifically towards those accused. It is one of those things which very often is out of our hands. We are made available specifically by our regional court presidents, but beside that, I suppose I could have refused. I took the opportunity, fortunately for me, under all these times when I did go and act, there was no major denial. Yes, time delays, but nobody was served an injustice specifically because I wasn't there. Time delay, yes, but not otherwise.
I don't think you understand. You know this expression, justice delayed is justice denied? What the commissioner seeks to find out is it really consistent with a commitment to delivering justice to the people without delay, that when confronted with a choice between finalizing a case and seizing an opportunity that will benefit you, an opportunity for upward mobility, an opportunity for career advancement, you effectively sacrifice the possibility of people having justice delivered speedily to them so that you can benefit. So does it not reflect negatively on your judgment? Am I characterizing your position, your question properly?
Yes,
very crisply,
yes.
Chief Justice.
Thank you, Chief Justice. Put that way, yes, certainly it does. I can't argue it away. Then I should not have taken it at all.
Well, the question is, why did you do it? Because it must have dawned on you. Did it not dawn on you, perhaps, that, wow, these people are going to suffer? So let me give you an example. When I worked for government in a different capacity years back, people would come to me during the lunch hour. So the choice would be, do I assist these people or do I choose food? Considering that some of them come from far removed places, transport may even leave them behind, I would rather not eat and help them, I'll eat later. So do I do justice now to these people and wait for an opportunity later? Did it dawn on you or did it not register?
So not immediately, but it did, pretty soon did dawn upon me. But by then I was already going at it.
Yes. You want okay, Commissioner Didiza.
Thank you very much, CJ. Good afternoon, Ms.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. On the application form on page 15.10, the question is with regards to the significant contribution to the law and the pursuit of justice in South Africa. Your answer is, I'm passionate about dispensing justice without fear, favor, or prejudice to all. Maybe if you can just add a little bit of, in that statement, What is it that you have done that, in your view, has made this contribution to law and justice and pursuit of justice?
Ma'am, my legal career started before I joined the bench as an attorney. I was also always passionate to see to it that whoever walks through my front door gets legal representation. Very often that meant referring the person to legal aid. Sometimes I also acted pro bono for these people because I felt they had a voice and they had a right to be heard. It started there, and then I progressed to the bench itself. Very often people enter the courts and they have this absolute feeling, whether it's now district or regional or any other court, that nobody's listening to them, nobody's helping them. It gives me a great amount of satisfaction to finalize a case and to see that litigants are happy. Both parties are never always going to be happy, but at least to be able to see that you've helped these people and that at the end of the day, justice was done to their case. They got their decision, and that is the end of the story for them.
Are there any articles or papers that you might have written on the specific part of the law which you would regard it made a contribution in advancing our jurisprudence as a country?
So I've not, sorry ma'am, I haven't written specific articles, but I did do a thesis on the implications of the Child Justice Act on sentencing, which at the time, and I still believe, was quite useful training of different magistrates, regional magistrates. It's also available at University of UNISA's library and things. And it learned me a great deal in putting forward the implications and the different way of thinking which the Child Justice Bill brought into play when dealing specifically with juveniles and when dealing with sentencing these juveniles.
Just the last one, CJ. I'm sorry that I'll have to say what I'm saying, but being a woman and knowing that there are very few women in the judiciary, is there anything that you have done personally or maybe with others to actually ensure that you support, encourage more women to come in the profession so that indeed, as part of the transformation agenda, they can, form part of this arm of state?
Ma'am, I will call me sort of a mentor for a couple of female ladies, which frequently phones me on various issues of the law, just to talk, to get my, to see whether I follow their line of arguing and their line of reasoning, or to seek advice. I'm not a person that knows everything, and they know it as well. I told them. But I like to help women specifically, actually all people. My door, I've got a fairly open door policy pertaining to my colleagues' district as well as regional court. I'm also a facilitator. I don't know if you noted from the application. And is that I've got an open door policy to anybody to call me. But specifically, I've got a couple of females which phones me on a regular weekly basis. Just to talk to me about specifically something, a case which they're dealing with, just to hear. But often these women just need a soundboard. It's nice to just have a soundboard, especially in the world which we work in. So in that way, unofficially, yes, I feel that I have contributed, and I'm still prepared to contribute and will always do it, because I feel that on the way up you also help the others to go up with you. You don't just climb the ladder and then leave your colleagues behind. It's important because these people are also your support structure.
Thank you, Commissioner Didiza. Thank you very much, ma'am. You're excused.
Thank you, sir.